If you would please welcome Pamela Hopkins and Laura Cass.
I just have two things to say before I start. Every time Jonathan says, "I'm here to remind you," I think you're going to break into that song, "I'm here to remind you," and I wish you would. That is so, I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. Yeah. And I am not going to say one word about his mustache, so we're going to just... It's cute. All right. This is serious, folks. Stop. Okay. Deep breath. Deep breath in. Blessings. We light a candle for the Tao, which teaches the purpose of life is inner harmony, peace, and longevity, achieved by living in accordance with the Tao. We light a candle for the shamanic traditions, which teaches that through a close relationship with the natural world, one gains guidance, support, and wisdom to live their best life. We light a candle for Hinduism, which teaches that we are able to escape bondage, ignorance, and a state of illusion through multiple experiences of life. Each life leads us closer to enlightenment. We light a candle for Judaism, which teaches that the highest calling is to obey the commandments of God and to live ethically according to law. We light a candle for all forms of Buddhism, which teaches the purpose of life is to avoid suffering and gain enlightenment. We light a candle for all forms of Christianity, which teaches salvation from sin through faith in Christ, through sacraments, and through good works. We light a candle for all forms of Islam, which teaches that through surrender to the will of God, one will gain paradise. We light a candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, which teaches that the soul is eternal and essentially good, and the purpose of life is to develop spiritually and draw closer to God. We light a candle for all forms of New Thought, which teaches the divinity of all creation, the supremacy of thought over matter, and that through a law of cause and effect, one creates the circumstances of their life. And we light a candle for all those who are as yet unaware of the power and presence of Spirit in their lives, and for the space that we are holding for them, and for all faith traditions unnamed in this ceremony. The final candle is the healing candle. It represents the revealing of the divinity at the core of all experience. This is your candle for whatever is in your mind and heart that requires the light.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Pamela. Taking a moment to draw our attention to the peace candle, which we keep consistently illuminated as a reflection of a consistent illumination of peace within each and every one of our souls. And as we individually allow that inner peace to inform every aspect of our being, every thought, every relationship, every interaction, every action, then right where we are creating a more peaceful world. So let's honor that understanding by sharing together this prayer for world peace. Divine love indwells each person and radiates from one to another. Harmony is established and peace reigns in the world. I invite us all to take a breath. take a breath. Let's allow ourselves to come to center, to release any unnecessary physical tension, to release any unnecessary conscious or mental tension, and bring the attention home. Bring the attention to the breath. Bring the attention to this moment, to this presence. And deepen into the awareness that Spirit's presence is in everything. Opening up to a greater realization that all creation is miraculous. That every single person is holy. Every single being is holy. Now take a breath. It's that simple, y'all. You know, I think sometimes we overcomplicate spiritual practice. We do a really good job of overcomplicating spiritual practice, especially if you've been in, you know, like I'm teaching an advanced study class right now, and they can tell you that I probably overcomplicate the practice in my inviting them to consider it from many, many different viewpoints and angles, and you know, that's what we do in education, but in the application of it, it's actually really simple. Just breathe. Just breathe. Breathe into the recognition that everything is holy. Everything is holy. I am personally interested in the healing of humanity from the illusion of separation. That's what I'm personally interested in. I joked in class on Tuesday night that my desire is to put myself out of a job because everyone understands their identity as the divine so profoundly. And I'm talking about, well, I was going to limit it to the world, but why limit it to the world? How about this? That every being universally understands their identity as divine to such a degree that we don't need to worry about trying to gather together to remind ourselves. But if you ever forget, I'm here to remind you. I'm here to remind you of your magnificence. There you go. I will sing it soon. Yes. Yeah. Our work here this is what I believe. You get to decide what you believe. But our work here, I believe, is to be the very definition and expression of love in and as all things. That's actually how I define, that's how I define infinite givingness. Infinite givingness is love itself. And we are here to give of ourselves. We are here to give of ourselves. Ernest Holmes defines love as the self-givingness of the Spirit to itself for the purposes of creation. Well, we are Spirit in expression, and so we can individualize this self-givingness of our own sense of self, of our own spirit. And we do it as a way to live in infinite creation in our lives. Charles Fillmore defined love this way: love is the pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. We are bound by love. We are bound by love. And when he does this thing, the glasses are coming off. He does this thing which is very common. We all kind of do this, right? He defined it, love is the pure essence of being, and in the definition, he uses a capital B, which is meant to separate it in some manner, saying it is the infinite being. It is the absolute being, which is to then be in contrast to the relative lowercase b being. And I think we need to get past that. You can clap, have at it. Yeah, please. Because the infinite being and the relative being are the same thing. And the more that we adopt that point of view, the more we are living from our own sense of divine identity. And so if we say that love is the pure essence of being, that means love is the pure essence of each and every one of us. The wholeness of us is love. And that binds together the entire human family. We are all connected through, in, and as love itself. Love is the essence of presence. Love is the essence of presence. And this month, as we're celebrating and deepening into our understanding of presence as a theme, an idea, that's what I really want us to get to. Love is the essence of presence. And when we are immersed in living from the point of view of love, then we are fully expressing the presence as the presence. And we let go of any sense of separation. That is how I believe we heal the discord we all are experiencing in this thing called life. How do we do that? Well, gosh, isn't that the thing? It's easy to say. How are we going to actually put it into practice? Forgive everything. Love only, forgive everything, remember who you are. Absolutely. You know, those are the tools that resonated with me to such a degree that I decided that I want them to be the tools that comprise the mission of this spiritual community. Love only, forgive everything, remember who you are. The thing about that is it requires our attention. It requires our participation. It requires something of us to allow that to come into expression. And attention, this is where I'm going today. Attention is the doorway to presence. Attention is the doorway to presence. When we pay attention. And there's a thing in me that says when we pay attention and then we also, no, that's not going to work. Never mind. Forget it. When we pay attention, we are opening ourselves up to a greater recognition as the presence. Not of the presence, as the presence. And there is an important distinction that carries me throughout my ministry. You know, I've started to begin every single week by saying, I see, look out. I mean, I've done this on occasion, but I'm making it a more frequent experience to step up here and say, I see the faces of God before me. And that's not lip service. I choose to understand that every single person I encounter is the face of God expressed. And how will I choose to experience life from that point of view? Because it's all choice. Talked a lot about choice last week, choice and action. It is all choice. And so I choose to give my attention with love. And when we give attention with love, then we become active participants in the healing of humanity. And there is no scale to it. You know, I think sometimes we get into this frame of mind around spiritual practice that if it isn't perfect, if it isn't just right, if it isn't, then what's the point? Because, you know, if I can't do it right or I can't heal the entire world, then what's the point? Heal yourself. Start there. Heal yourself. Don't worry about all the stuff out there. Heal the self, because there is no scale in healing. There is no great, there is no small, there is just love. There is just love. And this is spiritual service. To love. That's spiritual service. We have a culturally trained tendency. It's a culturally trained tendency. You're going, what the heck is he talking about? we have a culturally trained tendency to approach life from this point of view, to be consumers. To consume, to take it all in, to, consume just the right things that they're trying to sell us so that we can enhance the quality of our experience, right? All of that consumption is born out of fear. If we don't consume, then who are we? That's a cultural thing. I'm inviting us to perhaps alleviate that a little bit in our lives. Because even in spirituality, we are consumers. We're consumers in spirituality, and I think that we can let that dissipate. If you have ever found yourself engaging in a spiritual experience with this in mind, what is it I will get out of this? You are a spiritual consumer. Or maybe this is the question, well, what's in it for me? You're a spiritual consumer. And I'm not saying that here's the thing, if it's in balance with giving and receiving, which is the nature of the divine, there's nothing wrong with being a consumer, as long as consumers, we are also giving back. But if the point of view is primarily, well, what will I get out of this spiritual experience? We have a healing circle here once quarterly. If there is a fifth Wednesday in the month, we set up the sanctuary, and it's growing, by the way. I think at some point we're going to have the healing circle be the entire sanctuary. Last time I think we had like 32 participants, and we take all the chairs and we put them in a circle here and like put other chairs back. And I think sometimes when I used to engage in going as a participant to the healing circles, there was a little bit of well, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this experience? What I would like us all to remember is that this is a collective and cohesive experience where our very presence is a healing presence, whether you are there as a participant or a prayer chaplain or a practitioner or a minister. That our communion is a healing presence. Our communion is a healing presence. And the thing is, if we're living from the point of view of what will I get out of it or what's in it for me, that default mindset can make its way into an entire community. It can make its way into our spiritual practice in prayer. I think, I'm teaching the prayer class on Tuesday nights now, and I think one of the primary drivers for me is to let go of the notion that we are engaging in prayer to get something. To let go of the notion that prayer is about getting or manipulating or changing. To open up to the realization that prayer is about being. Profoundly being. Practicing presence is the way that we can let go of this consumer-minded spirituality. Practicing presence invites something else. Practicing presence calls us to participation and service. Changing what's in it for me to what's in me for the world. What's in me for the world? How will I choose to give of myself today? If presence is everywhere, and that's fundamentally what we teach, we use a word, presence, to talk about the divine. If presence is everywhere, if spiritual presence is everywhere, then nothing is ordinary. Nothing is ordinary, and it is all worthy of reverence. That's what I love about this song. That's what I love about this song. That lyric, even in the tiniest blade of grass, I see God, for God is everywhere. There are several phrases that echo that same kind of idea, to recognize the divine in everything. Everything. Even the difficulties. Because God is in that too. God is in that too. And if we recognize the difficulties in our life from the point of view of a divine identity, to recognize that that difficulty is a reflection of something within each and every one of us, not in the way that we would go down the path to blaming ourselves for it, but understanding that we are empowered in that moment to address whatever the difficulty is from the point of view of that divine identity, to pour love onto that divine difficulty. I'm going to call it a divine difficulty now, from now on. Every difficulty is a divine difficulty, right? Because when I recognize it as divine, I am empowered in that moment to do something about it. Because even in the tiniest blade of grass, I see God. That is a choice. That is a choice. And this shift in consciousness is not just noticing, but allowing an impulse in action through the noticing. So as I notice, I am impelled into action. That's the power. That's the power of this shift to a presence awareness. Attention in this trains our sight. In every single face I look upon, I see God, the lyric says. In every single face I look upon, I see God. Attention becomes a way of seeing the sacred in others. No excuses and no exceptions. We have to see the essence of spirit. We have to see the face of God in every single person we encounter, even if that person is a politician on television. That's all I'm going to say. Living from the point of view of that attention expands our hearts beyond perceptions of difference. That's what the attention does. It expands our hearts beyond perceptions of difference. In every single race around the world, I feel God. Can you feel God in this room? Can you extend that feeling beyond this room to understand that worldwide, or really universally, it's all God? Attention to a divine presence as the divine presence dissolves notions of us and them. I've always said that when I stand up here and I claim a divine identity, and I use these words sometimes to claim a divine identity, and I want to be really clear, this is the whole purpose of me stating these 3 words out loud is not to set myself apart. I am God. You are God. And when I exclaim that for myself, because that's the first person presence that we are talking about. I am that which is. You are that which is. We are that which is. It dissolves notions of us and them, and it becomes the great equalizer when we begin to see things rightly, which is the call of all spiritual traditions, I believe. To understand and see things rightly, and in seeing things rightly, we live rightly. Attention sanctifies the moment. All creation is miraculous. Live from that point of view. All creation is miraculous. Attention in and to the moment turns the world luminous. Everything lights up with that. Light up the world with your gift of presence. That's the call today. I don't often use parables, but I got a parable today. It's not a parable from Scripture. But a seeker visited a spiritual teacher every week. The seeker came to the teacher every week, and they would come in weekly with a polished cup and say, "My life is heavy. Pour something into me. I am here to be filled." And the teacher would pour, the seeker would drink, and very little changed. One week, anticipating the arrival of the seeker, the teacher set a small lantern on the table instead of a teapot. When the seeker arrived, the teacher said, "Today, I won't be pouring." And the seeker frowned. "Well, then why am I here?" The teacher said, "To pay attention." The teacher then pointed to the lantern and said, "Tell me what you notice." The seeker looked and said, "It's a lantern." Teacher said, "Look again." And he turned the lantern slightly, and through the glass, the seeker saw the tiniest details. A braided wick, pool of oil reflecting the flame, a soft halo of light that touched the teacher's hands. And the teacher asked, "How long has this light been here? Since you lit it, the seeker shrugged. And how long have my hands been here? The seeker looked up, confused. Always? The teacher softened. That's the difference, the teacher said, between being filled and being present. When you come to be filled, you miss what's already here. The seeker responded, but I need something, I'm empty. The teacher picked up the cup from the seeker and said, the cup is not the issue. It's that you think your life is a place to visit rather than a light you live to express. Leave the cup and take the lantern. The seeker hesitated, but it's yours. To which the teacher responded, it was never mine. It belongs to whoever is willing to carry the light. Spirit's presence is in everything. Every single person is holy. Peace and blessings. You are magnificent. This is the life practice this week. There's your lantern. Practice seeing the sacred in the mundane. I don't remember if it was the prayer class or the practitioner class where I was talking about, no, it was the prayer class, where I talked about one of the assignments that I did when I was becoming a religious science practitioner for the first time. Like I became a religious science practitioner multiple times. That only happened once. But when I was becoming a religious science practitioner before ministry, one of the assignments in one of the classes was to take a mundane task in our everyday life and redefine it from a sacred point of view. And so I wrote an entire paper about making the cleaning of my washroom a sacred practice. And I've lived from that point of view. So every time I every time I am blessed to clean my washroom, I remind myself that it is, too, a spiritual practice. Now, maybe you are not going to go that far, but I invite you to look at the things you perceive as mundane in your life and look at them by seeing the sacred within them. That's the life practice.